There's a lot of understandable confusion out there about the two upcoming Pokémon games Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon. Announced on June 6th in a weird montage at the end of a trailer for Pokémon Tournament Deluxe, the last 2 months went by without any information about these games. Now, however, the first couple of trailers have been released, and people still have no idea what these games are going to be. I think I'm not exaggerating by saying that a lot of people feel really lost and are simply confused by the information that has been released so far, which sadly isn't much. So I'm trying to put together all the information we have and try to explain what I think these games are going to be and what you can be expecting. Let's start by looking at previous installments of the Pokémon mainline games. So far there are 7 generations of games. The latest one started in November 2016 with the release of Pokémon Sun and Moon for the Nintendo 3DS. They are comparable to Pokémon Red and Blue, Gold and Silver, Ruby and Sapphire, and so on. In November 2017 now, Pokémon Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon will be released, and they are what is called third versions, although it's not entirely clear what that means exactly, and the fact that Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon are 2 games makes everything a bit more complicated to understand and explain. To get a better idea of what Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon are going to be then, let's first look at all the third versions released so far and analyze their content. If you don't care about that, know everything already, or just want to know how exactly Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon are going to compare to other games, skip ahead to the time you see on screen right now. It all began with Pokémon Blue. As you may know, the first released Pokémon games were not Red and Blue, but Red and Green, released in February 1996 in Japan. Pokémon Blue was released in October the same year, exclusively to subscribers of the Korogoro magazine. Yes, exactly that thing we're still excited about leaking every month. The Pokémon versions of Red and Blue we got in the West are entirely based on the Japanese Pokémon Blue version, which featured overhauled graphics like new sprites for other Pokémon, different in-game trades, changed exclusive Pokémon, a redesign of Cerulean Cave, as well as a couple of minor bug fixes. It didn't add any content though, so let's skip ahead a bit. Pokémon Yellow version Special Pikachu Edition was the first real third version in the Pokémon franchise. Released in September 1998, more than 2 years after the original Red and Green, it changed the game's content to more closely resemble the anime series, giving you Pikachu as the starter Pokémon, which, like the Pikachu in the show, followed you on foot instead of staying in its Pokéball. The teams of most gym leaders changed, and once again all sprites for the Pokémon were redone, so they finally looked acceptable. It's a wonder Pokémon became this popular with sprites like these. I mean, look at them. They're hideous. If you had a Pikachu that knew the move Surf, you could play a new minigame called Pikachu's Beach. And although there were a bunch of other little changes, for example you could get Bulbasaur, Charmander and Squirtle all in one playthrough, the story, characters and game itself didn't really change. Pokémon Crystal is more widely considered the original third version. Released around 1 year after Pokémon Gold and Silver, Pokémon Crystal dropped compatibility for the original Game Boy and was exclusively playable on Game Boy Color. Changes for this game included the introduction of animated Pokémon sprites, the ability to play as a girl, and graphics changes to places like the Burnt Tower or the Ice Path. Very interesting are the changes to the main story, which is now a bit more focused on Suicune, one of the 3 legendary beasts. The new character Yucine is introduced, and although most of your journey through Johto is unchanged, the Crystal experience is noticeably different from the one in the original 2 games. Lastly, Crystal introduced the Battle Tower for the first time, which gave players a continual post-game challenge and has since become a standard addition to the mainline games. After Ruby and Sapphire were released on November 21st, 2002 for the Game Boy Advance, Game Freak released remakes of the original Pokémon games Red and Green in January 2004. On September 16th the same year, Pokémon Emerald was released and is to this day one of the favorite games of many Pokémon fans. Like Crystal, the game is no longer focused on the legendary Pokémon of the 2 original games, but instead the main plot revolves around both of them, as well as Rayquaza. Animated sprites are back, as are general graphical changes, but what made this game really different from the originals was the focus on double battles. Introduced in Ruby and Sapphire, Outside of a couple handful of battles and the Moss Deep City gym, double battles were really sparse in those games. Emerald changed that completely and added dozens of new trainers to routes, gyms and dungeons, most of which you were able to defeat in pairs. An interesting thing Ruby and Sapphire did was change the evil team depending on which version you played. If you had Sapphire, Team Aqua were the villains and you fought together with Team Magma against them. In Ruby, those roles were swapped, but you met and fought them in the same places. In Emerald, both teams are evil, and you have some additional encounters with them in places they didn't show up at in the originals. The cell phone is back, gym leader teams changed, move toolers were found across the region, and instead of having contest halls of different ranks in 4 cities, there is now only one big hall for all ranks in Lilycove City. The 3 others being replaced by battle tents, a sort of prelude attraction to the most interesting and beloved addition to this game, the Battle Frontier. Replacing the Battle Tower, this post-game area is home to 7 facilities, each with their own set of rules and challenges that provided hours of challenging content for interested players to beat. On September 13th, 2008, 2 years after the release of Diamond and Pearl, Pokémon Platinum was released for the Nintendo DS. Whereas Pokémon Emerald was revered by fans because it added so much to the whole region, Platinum is beloved because it fixed most of the problems people had with Diamond and Pearl. The pacing of the story was changed and it became much better, the story was more elaborate and interesting, the speed of everything like battles and surfing was vastly improved, and the regional dex was expanded by 59 Pokémon, giving players more options for their team composition. Whereas in Diamond and Pearl, you only had access to 2 Fire-type lines, one of which was the starter Pokémon, Platinum pushed that number up to an incredible 5 lines of Fire-type Pokémon. Wow! Rotom, Shaman and Giratina got new forms, and Giratina is now the main legendary Pokémon in the story, and opens a portal to the Distortion World on top of Mount Coronet during the climax of the story, which is basically a new dungeon to explore, and the only real new place to visit compared to Diamond and Pearl. The sprites for the Pokémon were once again changed, towns and buildings were redesigned, and the look of the northeastern island, which you reach in the post-game, has been completely overhauled, now actually looking like a tropical island, with not just an active volcano on it, but also a new battle frontier, this time featuring 5 different facilities. The legendary birds now roam the region in post-game, a whole lot of other changes and additions were made, and the game corner slot machines were disabled in the European version of the game, because Europe takes gambling and children's games incredibly seriously. So if you ever wondered why Game Freak took out the game corners in the following games, thank Europe for that. All these things made Pokémon Platinum one of the favorites of many Pokémon fans. As of now, Platinum is the last traditional 3rd version, but around 4 years later, the first ever direct sequels, excluding Gold and Silver of course, came out and were very similar to 3rd versions. Released in June 2012 for the Nintendo DS, Pokémon Black 2 and White 2 take place 2 years after the events of Pokémon Black and White. Playing a completely new character and traveling through new parts of the Unova region, the game basically offers a completely new experience and story. Like with Platinum, these games add new forms to legendary Pokémon. Keldeo got the Resolute form, the Kami Trio got their Therian forms, and Kyurem got its Black and White forms, which are the new version exclusive mascots for the game and take part in the story. Instead of again featuring only Generation 5 Pokémon during the story, the new Unova is filled to the brim with old and new Pokémon alike. All trainer sprites are now animated, most places in Unova have changed quite a bit in the 2 years, and new additions to the region have been made, like the Pokémon World Tournament or the Pokestar Studios. Challenge and easy modes are something that fans wish would be part in every Pokémon game, but so far have only been featured here. They are the first difficulty settings in a Pokémon game, and although the way to unlock them is incredibly stupid, they don't just change the levels of your opponent's Pokémon, but also have them use items, different moves, and making them smarter, or dumber, all around. And who could forget the 2 most important changes of them all? Warchog now uses 2 attack EVs instead of just 1, and Guarantee M95 Snarl is no longer restricted to events. Black and White 2 are truly the magnum opus of the Pokémon franchise. Pokémon X and Y, released worldwide in 2013, interestingly did not receive a 3rd version, although most fans, hoping for another Platinum situation, surely wish they did. Now, with Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon, we are back to the enhanced third versions, and we can finally try to put together all the information we have right now and compare it to the other games. So, are they going to be classical third versions like Platinum, Emerald or Crystal? Are they going to resemble Black 2 and White 2, or are they going to be something completely different? First of all, let's talk about something a couple of people seem confused about. Why are there both Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon, when Yellow, Crystal, Emerald and Platinum were just one game? Well, the simple reason is that two versions just sell better, giving everyone that feeling that they are missing out on something, however small it may be. Also, it kinda feels more right for Pokémon games to release as pairs, although I might just be saying that because I was brainwashed by the capitalist masterminds at Game Freak trying to sell me basically the same game twice. Who knows? Comparing Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon to Black 2 and White 2 just because of that, however, is definitely wrong, especially because there is a lot of evidence that these two pairs of games are not going to have a lot in common. I saw a lot of speculation online that Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon are going to be sequels to the original Sun and Moon, which makes sense given the story focus of these games and the amount of open plot threads at the end of them. However, the most obvious evidence that this is not going to be a sequel is the fact that we are going to play as the same characters as we did in Sun and Moon. Black 2 and White 2 introduced new protagonists with Nate and Rosa instead of continuing with Hilbert and Hilda, which makes a lot of sense from a game design perspective. I mean, think about it, at the end of Black and White's post-game content, your Pokémon will all be in their 70s, already fully evolved, already extremely strong. Starting the sequels with such a strong team would not make a lot of sense and wouldn't be very much fun for the following dozens of hours. I'll definitely talk about this and why it's a bad idea a bit more in a future video called The Second Region Problem. The only option for keeping the same player character in a sequel would be to ignore their previous team and give them an arbitrary reason to start off on a new journey with a new starter Pokémon at level 5, which doesn't really sound like something anybody could seriously come up with, right? It would be much easier to design and create new characters for a hypothetical sequel, which for Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon they didn't do. Just compare the old and the new characters. They look pretty much identical, just with different hairstyles and clothes. Also, I would think that Game Freak would have made a pretty big deal about the fact that Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon will continue Lily's, your story, and are not just an alternative retelling of the same stuff. So in conclusion, Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon are not a continuation, but a reimagining of the story of Sun and Moon. Now what about areas? Black 2 and White 2 added a whole lot of routes and towns, and Platinum changed the look of a lot of places. What will Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon do? Well, Alola has changed. Not much, but it did. Over the course of the game, we will visit only slightly changed areas from Sun and Moon, maybe in a different order this time, but most things will probably still look exactly the same. New places do exist though, like this one with a lot of Pikachu. This area, which looks like the Ultra Space for Katana, which opens up the possibility for every Ultra Beast to have its own Ultra Space for you to explore, as well as this building, which looks a lot like Lieutenant Surge's gym in Vermilion City. I doubt, however, very much that we will be visiting Kanto in this game, so this area is either in one of the new buildings in Alola cities, is a part of the power plant which we might finally be able to enter, or is located somewhere completely new, maybe even on a new 5th island. If you look at this particular cloud, it seems like it might be covering something up. If it is indeed a 5th island, it might already be represented by this green shape that is now part of the design on the official website, the other colors representing the other 4 islands. The shape and size doesn't really seem to fit though, and I personally wouldn't bet on Game Freak hiding a big island behind this cloud. Precedent for them doing exactly that, however, exists. For Platinum, they covered up the battle frontier with clouds, for Black 2 and White 2 they covered most of the map in ice, and for Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire they covered up the battle resort with another cloud, which was especially frustrating for people who hoped to see the battle frontier hiding behind that. So, old areas changed slightly for Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon, and even if there might not be a completely new 5th island to explore, some smaller new areas are definitely there. For a new Pokémon we have Solgaleo and Lunala, which are now covered in parts of Necrozma's armor. They are probably going to be important to the story, since they are on the cover of the box. Also, we have seen a new form for Lycanroc, called the Dusk form in English, which made some people speculate about a fourth form called Dawn form, although I seriously doubt that it exists. In many other languages the Dusk form is known as the Twilight form, and the way they are treating this third form, being event exclusive and all, doesn't indicate that there will be another one. What is much more likely to exist is a new form for Necrozma. The official box art might already be showing it to us, because if you combine the two boxes, a bright creature can be seen, its head resembling a star. Could this be Necrozma without its armor? Would it be important to the story? Lastly, the possibility exists that new Alola forms will be added as well. With the release of the original Gold and Silver games on Virtual Console, as well as their connectivity to Pokémon Bank, a lot of people have been speculating about Johto Pokémon getting Alola forms. Although I really want this to be true, I'm certainly not fully convinced, but maybe that's just me. New Mega Pokémon are also a possibility, but again, I wouldn't bet on it. A popular fan idea is that new generations from now on will start with both a set of wholly new Pokémon, as well as a bunch of regional forms for older Pokémon. Remakes of older games then will introduce new Mega Pokémon, like Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire did. Hopefully they will surprise us, but maybe they'll only add the 4 forms I have been talking about, which would be disappointing. I mean, how hard could it be to add a couple of new Mega or Alola Pokémon, right? Game Freak can literally steal ideas from fans who by now must have uploaded a potential form to every single Pokémon existing, right? But I digress. Enough with speculations and possibilities. A pretty safe bet is that move tutors will be in the game, as they were with every other third version so far. An expanded Pokédex is also a strong possibility. Also, they even said in the announcement video that new Pokémon which didn't appear in Pokémon Sun and Moon will appear, although that could just be referring to the new forms like Lycanroc Dusk. But it might also hint at additional Alola forms and Mega Pokémon. One way or another, the Pokédex will likely be expanded. In the other third versions, you were able to catch legendaries from past regions in the post-game, like the birds in Platinum or the Regis in Black 2 and White 2. It is reasonable to expect Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon to follow suit. One thing I haven't discussed in the previous segment were the level up movesets of Pokémon that were updated in the third versions, like Yanma learning Wing Attack at level 37 in Crystal, but not at all in Gold and Silver. So we may see some tweaking here as well, though the bulk of it will be for the old Pokémon of the expanded regional decks. Now let us discuss the thing that is most important to a lot of people. Will Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon feature a battle frontier, or something similar to that? We obviously don't know the full answer, but from what we can see from the new Alola map, is that the battle tree is still where it was before, meaning it wasn't completely replaced by a battle frontier like previous battle towers. As I see it, there are 3 possibilities now. First, the battle tree hasn't changed in any meaningful way, and there is no battle frontier or something comparable like the Pokémon World Tournament. A lot of people would be disappointed, but in interviews it has been made clear that features like the Battle Frontier are not a focus for Game Freak, since most people aren't really interested in them, which is definitely a fair point. Why should Game Freak put a lot of work into a feature that only a few of their players are going to enjoy and put time in? They know the numbers and made the decision not to bring it back for the Ruby and Sapphire remakes, so this possibility might be the most likely scenario. But there are 2 more. Second, the battle tree is still the only battling facility, excluding the Battle Royale, but additional modes have been added that resemble those from Battle Frontier facilities. This may be the best compromise between work hours spent and pleasing the fans, although I could certainly understand the criticism that this would look and feel like a half-assed feature. The third possibility is that there is a new Battle Frontier on a 5th island hidden behind carefully placed clouds on the official map. Although that sentence alone should tell you how likely this is to be true. One last thing I want to talk about is the development time of third versions. Pokémon Sun and Moon came out in November 2016. Now, less than a year later, Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon will be released, which means that only around 1 year of development time went into these games, and not even the whole team at Game Freak worked on them. Most of them should already be working on the Switch games, which will probably be released in late 2019, with 2018 being a year off. If we directly compare this development time to Blacktooth and Whitetooth, for example, which came out 21 months after the original games, we can deduce that for Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon there will be far less changes than in those games, which by now should already be clear. Platinum was released 2 years after Diamond and Pearl, and although the same is true for Emerald, Fire Red and Leaf Green were released earlier the same year, which makes guessing how long Emerald was in development much harder. Crystal resembles the current time frame for Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon much more closely, but is not really comparable because developing a 3D game for the 3DS with a large and professional development team is much different than developing a 2D game for the Game Boy Color as a smaller and less experienced game freak. I'm not saying that Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon will be rushed or light on new content due to the short development time, but we should all be keeping our expectations in check considering it has only been a year. Game development is hard and there are a lot of things to work on, so a new Battle Frontier will be low on their priority list. So, now we have talked way too much about what third versions are and what Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon are and possibly could be, and I haven't even touched on additional Z moves like Kommo-o's clangorous Soul Blaze or new totem fights in new and changed trials. In the newest trailer we have seen Dukia and Kahili showing up outside the Pokémon League, meaning they might be trial captains holding their own trials. Maybe trials aren't even going to be part of these games anymore, and we will just go back to the classical style of 8 gym leaders you have to defeat, although we can still see the Island Challenge amulet on the player character's backpack. In short, we don't know anything solid about the structure of these games. However, even that is not unprecedented, because I certainly remember a lot of people being confused about Sun and Moon structure before the trailer about trials, kahunas and all that was released. So there is still a lot of uncertainty out there about these games, but I hope I've cleared at least some of it up. I personally am really looking forward to finding out more about these games and playing them this November, since so far none of the third versions were cheap cash grabs as some people already decided Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon to be. But what about you? Will you buy these games? Will you wait for more information to decide that, or will you ignore them unless a Battle Frontier or something comparable is in them? In the end, let's all remember to be patient, wait for more solid information and reviews, and hope that these turn out to actually be the best Pokémon games ever made. Thanks for watching.